What I chose to talk about tonight, and once again, anytime someone wants to have a particular issue being discussed, this is an open forum. I like to hear what people want to talk about. Otherwise, you're left with what I wanted to talk about. And actually, initially, I was going to give everyone like 3 options of what I wanted to talk about and let people choose. But I see it doesn't even work, right? Democracy doesn't really work. Okay. Controversy. Okay. So what I chose, and I put in the title, is why Judaism is important. So we're all Jewish here, and therefore, and we're all passionate about their Judaism. So therefore, you can say, "Hey, Rabbi Wolpe, we all believe that our Judaism is important," and I think everyone around the room here believes that their Judaism is important. So why is it important to discuss this particular topic? So I saw in the famous book of Jewish ethics called the Mesilat Yesharim, in English known as the Path of the Just. And he writes in the famous introduction, he writes, "Nothing I tell you in this book, you do not know already. Everything you know already. But specifically the things that you know the best, things that you absolutely don't doubt, those are the things that people lose sight of." So I was thinking that even though what we're talking about today is probably something that most of us will agree with, most of us would passionately defend, still I think it's important to reinforce the importance of these 3 ideas that hopefully we're going to talk about tonight. As to why Judaism is important or should be important. And additionally, I think I'm speaking for myself as well. If we are to impress upon ourselves how our Judaism is important, we can find ways to spend more time on these ideas and implement the lessons into our life, to give more time, energy, focus, to strive to achieve more if it's really that important. Okay? So what we're going to try to see is why is that important, and even if we know why it's important, we're going to reinforce that, and hopefully this will compel us to take it more seriously and to put more effort in the pursuit of our Judaism. Okay, so when I'm talking about Judaism, I'm talking about the ideas of Judaism. Primarily the idea of God, which is the Jewish idea, the idea of Torah, the idea of mitzvot, of the Torah. The Torah gives us the instructions of the Torah. And lastly, the idea of the Jewish society, Jewish culture, which I would argue is actually an outgrowth of the previous ideas, that our Jewish society, over the millennia was formed out of living as a community with a certain lifestyle and certain characteristics that were governed by the Torah, though that brought about the idea of Jewish culture and the idea of Jewish society. So we're going to talk about why these things are important. Why is the idea of God important? Why is the idea of Torah, mitzvos, Jewish society, and Jewish culture important? How's everyone doing? Doing good? Okay, so what I came up was three reasons, and there may be more, and these reasons really could each be their own discussion or their own series. But I just think it's always good to get a snapshot of ideas. So idea number 1: why is Judaism important, or why should it be important to me? Why should I put effort into it? Why should I invest time in it? Why should I make it a big primary aspect of my life? Why is it important? The reason why is because Judaism affords us the ability to maximize life. It's good for me. I want to have pleasure in life. I want to accomplish life. I want to have meaning in life. These are things that we need. And Judaism is good for us. So why is it important? Because it's something which could bring me all the good things that I want in life. Now, that's a pretty bold claim. It's a pretty bold claim. Why is it a bold claim? Because I know for sure that there are people who believe that, especially if you look at the Torah and the mitzvos, there are restrictions, there are obligations, there are requirements. It does not look like a pleasure manual when you read the Torah. You read the mitzvos. It doesn't look like a pleasure manual. And I'm arguing here today that Judaism is, and the mitzvos, the Torah, are ways to maximize life and maximize pleasure. So this is why I put this one number 1, because I think it's something which it may be hard to accept or hard to understand. So in my opinion, and I'm going to try to outline this quickly. I know I don't want to go over time. In my opinion, and I've spoken about this once before, that we're here in life for one purpose. This is something that no one really disagrees with. No one, and I say no one, even from the secular world. And even from the religious, from the Jewish world. It sounds strange. You need to read Freud, and you need to read Frankl, and you need to read all the philosophers, and they'll tell you that man is here to have pleasure in life. And then you read the Jewish books, and it says, hey, man is here to have pleasure in life. No one's really disagreeing about this basic point. And if you take all religions and all doctrines and all philosophical codes, they will all pretty much agree that we're here to have pleasure. And it's shocking to say that. I think that it's shocking to say that from a religious perspective. I think maybe if you talk to the Christians or the Muslims, they're not selling pleasure necessarily over here. They're saying pleasure. After you die, you won't go to hell, or after you die, you'll get the virgins, or whatever they try to sell. And I don't think that. I think that Judaism, we're talking. Well, we do believe in that as well, but we're also talking about pleasure, maximizing life that we're here right now on Earth as humans, as bodies and souls, to maximize pleasure. And this is a pretty bold claim, but when I researched the idea, it turns out that it's actually not very far from the truth. In fact, I think it is true. And I'll give an example. There's lots of very simple, basic pleasures in life. Like you have good food, or simple pleasure. You have it, and it's and you enjoy it, and you move on. In my opinion, when we make a bracha on foods, there's 6 different categories of blessings that we make on foods. What we're doing is trying to take that experience, that pleasureful experience, and make it a more grand experience. When we take a food and we say, oh gosh, this apple or this hot dog was afforded to me to be able to enjoy by the Almighty God, and I want to thank Him for that. Right? What you're doing is you're taking a mundane exercise and making it into an experience. And every pleasure in life, the Talmud says, you cannot have any pleasure in life without making a blessing. It's forbidden. So we can look at that as a restriction, but also, in a deeper sense, all it is saying you're here to maximize pleasure. You're able to sense pleasures because you're supposed to enjoy them, but try to maximize that. And the Torah is a book of manuals and instructions on how to maximize pleasure. So it may look like a restriction, a requirement, an obligation when it says make a blessing on food, but in reality, in the deeper sense, it's telling you maximize pleasure. And in all areas of pleasure, that's a very simple one. But, it's more intuitive when you think about meaning. Meaning is already a very sophisticated pleasure. The pleasure of meaning is to live life for a purpose. To try to be someone who affects his community and affects society at large and tries to leave a lasting legacy, that points to what a person accomplishes in life. It's living for a higher purpose. Well, that's already a sophisticated pleasure. And we talk about kindness and charity and being able to overcome your own personal shortcomings and all those things which seems like it's lots of work, right? Don't be lazy, right? Wake up in the morning and accomplish, right? Don't be greedy. Try to spread the wealth. Focus on, not spread the wealth, that's a bad term. But be charitable, hospitality. These are all things which could be viewed in the light of the mention of restriction. We have in the Torah. The Torah tells us we have to give 10% of our money to charity. Look at that, 10% is a lot of money. But what it's really telling you is you have to be a person that lives for other people as well. You have to expand your view on what's important to you in life, right? And if you're living for a community, that's a much higher level of learning. It's a very deep, sophisticated pleasure. Is it difficult? Yes, but that's the goal of the mitzvah. The goal of the mitzvah is to change your outlook on life. What am I living? Am I living for myself? I'm living for the community. I have a purpose. I'm living for a cause. That's already a great pleasure. And what I'm trying to say is that the requirements in the Torah, manual for pleasure. What you got, Jason?
I'm wondering whether the setup is for the individual pleasure or to maximize the pleasure of the success of the community itself. Because, I mean, you can have a gross amount of haves and have-nots, and a great difference, and you have an issue with following the Torah. We should have pretty much a minimal amount of problems going on there. Most things should be reasonably taken care of. I'm wondering if it's so much as, is it for my personal individual pledge, my higher pledges, or on average, in the community to have the most amount of people enjoying the best life possible.
So two things. Thing number one is that I think when we do things, we do it for ourselves. It means even when we do something for someone else, we do it for ourselves. Which means, and ultimately we are self-centered. Because for me to care about someone else, well, I gain from that as well. And what's compelling us to do good? Ourselves. And the fact that we want, the focus of living a more fulfilling life, a more spiritual life, a more meaningful life, that propels us to care about others. You have a story in the Talmud with Rabbi Akiva. One of the Romans said, "Oh, really? The Talmud records tens of anecdotes where primarily the Romans would have these debates with the Jewish rabbis, the Jewish scholars." So Rabbi Akiva, famous Rabbi Akiva, he met one of the Romans. He says, "Okay, your God is. You said that your God is merciful. He's merciful, really? So how come they're poor people?" So Rabbi Akiva said to him, "The reason why there's poor people, in order to afford everyone else the ability to do tzedakah, to live a greater life, to live a life of caring for others, a life of compassion, a life of hospitality, a life of extending your focus in life from being just about you, being selfish, to being to living for a cause, and a cause to be an idea as well." In Judaism, we're selling a lot of ideas to greater society. We'll talk about this a little bit later. The idea of the value of human life. It's a Jewish idea that we try to sell. Why? Because it's fulfilling. It's a very fulfilling. It's living for a cause when you're trying to bring other people to good places. When you're trying to liberate other people from oppression. Jews intuitively are driven to do good because Jews intuitively are driven to have a meaningful life. And when I see a requirement to the Torah, what I see is directives towards more fulfillment in life. And when I ask myself, why is Judaism important? Because Judaism enables me to have a better life, to have a more meaningful life, to have a more fulfilling life. That's, I think, reason number one. Questions, comments? Jared, what you got? Good?
Good.
Okay, so that's reason number one. Reason number two, I think it's good for the world. I think, remember this is all what I just came up with, other people can have different perspectives. I think that there's a lot of universal lessons that we have in our religion, in Judaism, in the Torah, that if people would adopt these ideas, we live in the closer you get to utopian society. I mean, we have a very complicated world with lots of multifaceted, complex problems, and that's something that's undeniable. And in various areas of society, there's many complex problems, and I don't want to get too political here, and I'm not trying to be political, but I think if we were to examine the morals and the lessons contained in the Torah, and if we found a way to broadcast those ideas to the rest of the world, many, if not most, of the world's problems could be fixed. And, if you were to try to think of a way, if we together would collectively try to think of a way to make the perfect society, in all likelihood, we'd think of certain areas where we could fix, societal problems. Correct? Correct. And I have a list here of six areas of focus that in all likelihood would be included in any comprehensive list of the world's problems that were to be that if they were to be corrected, then we'd live in a much better world than we live today. The world isn't that bad. Overall, it's not that bad, right? It's pretty good. It's largely improved than it was in historic time, prehistoric, historic times. It's not bad. There's still room for growth, and I think that if we really looked to the Torah as a source book, even to the Ten Commandments, right? They're universal lessons that can be applied across the board. And if every society just adopted just these 10 principles, how much of a radically different world would we have? And the reason why we look at the Ten Commandments with such reverence is because they're demonstrative of the general feeling with they're like a microcosm of all the Torah. The reason why at the Revelation at Sinai we had these 10 Commandments is because these 10 Commandments are like a mini Torah. Right? And then the Torah is like more specifics in these 10 categories. But I have 6 categories here that I think that what Judaism said about these 6 themes, if these hold the key to fixing society's problems. So, area number 1, education. Now, Judaism and education has been synonymous for a long, long time. Historically, the Jews always, it's funny. The Talmud says that if you have a city that doesn't have a school, so for us, it's really every city has a school. But rewind 150 years, no one, even 200 years, 300 years ago, everyone was illiterate. Everyone, 98% of people were illiterate. They didn't read and write. And the Talmud was written 1,500 years ago. The Talmud says if you have a city that doesn't have a school, you have to burn down the whole city. Just think about what kind of premium we placed on education thousands of years ago. And thankfully, there's been a tremendous push, a global push towards, making education, available to every person. But, we were there thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago, we already pointed with a finger at education and said, education is imperative for everyone. That's the issue number 1. Justice and equality. The idea of law, is already 2,000 years old, even in secular societies. The idea of organizing, codifying law, in secular, in secular governments, the Romans, highly sophisticated, organized system of law. But the idea of equality, justice and equality for all. We've all heard that. That all rings a bell in our. Where is that from? Where is this idea that all men are created equal? Where is it from? What's the origin? Right? It's from the Torah. Man is created in the image of God. Every man has value. Every person has value, regardless of social standing, regardless of sex, creed, gender. I guess that means sex and gender is the same thing. But all the basic value of human life. We'll get that. We'll get to that also. But the basic value that humans are equal. That's an idea we take for granted. Where does that come from? It comes from the Torah. And now there are places that don't have that. And that, if in a perfect society, there will be justice and equality for all. We could use the Torah as a starting point for that movement of, fixing the world.
It's often used to justify gender discrimination and to justify discrimination on sexual orientation and all sorts of other things.
Oh, wait, no. So you said 2 things here. I like the challenge. Okay. Very good. So, gender discrimination. So you have to source that one. Gender discrimination. To treat
men and women being
treated differently. That doesn't mean that there's no equality, because I think we could argue from a Torah perspective, men and women are they equal? Are they the same thing? No, they're different, right? Do you value men more than women from the Torah? I wouldn't argue that.
Following the Torah most literally, don't allow women to be rabbis, don't allow women to be a number
Okay,
of things.
well, that's
use things.
Okay, but different. No, sexual orientation is the second question. We'll get to that. That I think that there's room for that. That's a good question. But I think with regards to gender discrimination, I don't feel like that's not discrimination to say that men and women have different roles in the family or in the community. Why is that discrimination? Is that discrimination?
Some roles that people who follow the Torah most literally don't allow them to do.
So with regards to women rabbis, this was off the cuff here. So from a Torah perspective,
from a halakha perspective, there's nothing wrong with women being a rabbi. Absolutely not. And we even have Devorah. Devorah, 2,700 years ago, was the leader of the Jewish people, and she was a female. As to why some groups in Judaism have only recently made women rabbis and some have not, is specifically because we don't have any gender discrimination. And that is specifically because we don't feel like we have had years and years of mistreating women, right? If you were to read what the Torah says about how do you have to treat women, you would never think about the idea of gender discrimination. We have never mistreated our women. Remember the Talmud says you have to respect women. You can't. To us it sounds silly. Respect women, of course, but think about it. 2,000 years ago, it says you can't mistreat a woman. If you make a woman cry, like you're done. You're done from a Torah perspective. We never mistreated our women. Give me one area that Jewish people have mistreated their women. Never. So women can't be a rabbi. Okay. So they have different roles. There's mitzvahs that men can't do. Well, that doesn't mean that we discriminate against them. So it's not discrimination. If there's jobs for men, there's jobs for women. There's mitzvahs for men. There's mitzvahs for women. They're not equal. I would argue on the contrary. The Torah speaks way better about women than it do about men. Right? The Torah says is that the woman didn't sin with the golden calf, they didn't sin with this, right? They didn't sin with that, and they have tremendous intelligence in areas that men don't have, and they can accomplish. They're closer to the Almighty. How could you say that Judaism would have ever mistreated women or viewed them as a lower class? I don't think that there's a validity. I mean, different, yes. Different roles, yes. Different responsibilities, yes. Different mitzvahs. But to treat them less than I don't see the justification for that argument.
If I'm not mistaken, in court, if there's court cases, I think even though everyone's supposed to get have to get a fair trial in court, don't women get their hearing before the men do? If I'm not mistaken, in Jewish court, I think it's orphans go first, get priority to have their cases heard. I think women get priority over men to get their cases heard.
I'm not familiar with that, but
I was listening to something.
It might be true. It might be true, but the fact, like I said, there's nothing wrong with women being a rabbi. Why they don't do it? I think it's because they like to stand with tradition. But even if it were to say that women can't be rabbis, it says it's plenty of things that men can't do either. I don't think that's mistreatment of women.
I'm not saying it's mistreatment. I'm saying that I don't see equality as being.
No, the way I view equality is well, equality. Does equality mean that if you can't play in the WNBA, right? Why is
There are slaves in the Torah.
Well. Okay, but first of all,
the Torah doesn't cry out equality to me.
Let's talk about slaves for a second. So how much do you know about the laws regarding slaves? No, I'm not. I'll tell you a little bit
It has laws that they work for a certain number of years.
Yeah. So first of all, the Torah does does talk about slaves. You could have a slave, a Jewish slave, a non-Jewish slave. But even a non-Jewish slave, so you just think, right? If a non-Jewish slave, you can fine and mistreat them. Absolutely not. In fact, if you were to, God forbid, kill your, because you got upset at him, you whipped him, you are liable to be killed in a Jewish court of law. Right? A slave, a Gentile slave, right? How is that for equality? Which other society that had slaves would have that? Let's say you have a slave and you have one pillow. You have to, by Torah law, you have to give your pillow to your slave. So much so that the Talmud remarks that when someone acquires a slave, they acquire a master. We have even slaves. The laws about how you have to feed them, and you have to take care of their families. You have a slave because the slave stole from you, right? Or one of the cases you have
humane treatment, and there's things making it not be as bad as received. That doesn't cry out equality.
Okay, so you want to say that the whole idea of slaves is not okay. I can hear that argument. Okay, but
Still a lot more equality than any other society. I guess a question that, like, if the argument is that inherently there's different roles, and a slave, according to the Torah, serves a specific role, and a woman serves a specific role or has these responsibilities.
No. If you are to say that the idea of a slave, also have to view slaves differently. Slave doesn't mean you own them forever. Slave means if you stole from me, or if someone stole from me, and they have no money to pay for me, they have to work for me. I think that's
certain amounts of years.
And is they're slaves? We think of slaves as being whipped and being mistreated. I think that the Torah slave. So you say the word slave doesn't sound that that fair or whatever, but it's not quite like this. The idea of slavery the way we perceive it. So if someone steals, they have to pay. That's the law. If they have no money to pay, then they get sold. That's what you don't believe in. I would argue today the idea of putting someone in incarceration, that's way worse than slavery. I would argue. The idea of kicking someone. There's 2.5. Just today was in the news. There's 2.5 million Americans in prison doing nothing. That's no worse than slavery. I don't know. It's also terrible. You keep these people in a box, and you just breed further criminal activity.
I don't think the problem is with your superlatives.
Huh?
I don't think the problem is with the superlatives better than or worse than.
Right. So the system is not perfect. Our system is not perfect either, even though we live in a very progressive time. Right? It's not a perfect system. So yes, the Torah does sanction slaves. And the Torah, remember, this is from a time where slaves were everywhere. But even in idea of slavery, we could point to how well you have to treat your slave as Torah being way ahead of its time. In the idea of treating people fairly. Yeah. And with regards to what do you say? Homosexuals. We'll talk about that. Okay. Okay. Let's do. I don't want to go overtime. Oh, not overtime yet. Okay. Peace and harmony. What kind of premium the Torah places on peace? And shalom is the grandest ideal. There's only a few things you're allowed to lie. The Torah says you're allowed to lie in order to preserve shalom. The idea of shalom is so important, and the idea of family is the next one. The premium that we place on family. This may be again controversial, but I heard this is a startling statistic. And I'm not trying to say it with any political motivation. So just take this to what it is and don't be upset at me. 72% of children born in the African American community are born out of wedlock. 72%. Now, just that just is. I think it's not so much better in the other communities. It's the worst in that community. But think about that. What's happening to the idea of the family unit in America? What's happening? It's crazy. And what happened to those kids who grew up without a child who grows up without a father figure?
That's just making the assumption that children born out of wedlock are born under those circumstances.
What? What are the circumstances? What do you mean under what circumstances?
Part of the time it is, but that's
under which circumstances?
Percent.
No, what do you mean? Under what circumstances?
Under the circumstances that they're not going to have a father to raise them, it was just an accident.
Oh, so for sure, I agree to that point. For sure, that some of those children born out of wedlock will have a father. For sure, the number is less, but it's still startling. Still a startling number. And like I said, don't be upset at me. I'm just saying what the facts are. And I'm saying it's the mantra of a greater trend that the idea of the family the way it was, and it's very healthy for a child to grow up in a healthy, normal family, and Judaism places a tremendous stress on the idea of family, and I think that this is something that we could sell to society to try to make it a better place. It's very important to have a family. It's very important, for children to grow up in healthy, normal families, to have better, more productive lives.
I think, I'm not trying to take a political stand. I'm just trying to say is that an ideal in Judaism could be very, very beneficial for making a better society. Everyone agrees with that point? Okay. Social responsibility. This is big. We all know this too. We all know that, the stress that we put on social responsibility, the idea of chesed, the idea of speaking even to greater society. That the Torah said this is crazy. The idea of animal rights. The idea of animal rights. 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, the idea of environmental. I'm not trying to take up political stances on any issue here, but the Torah says you're not allowed to cut down certain trees. Just the idea of the social responsibility with regards to the environment, right? You can't cut down trees; it's forbidden. The animal rights. You cannot cause pain to animals. You can't kill animals for no reason. But also to build a better community. To promote the general welfare and the responsibility of not having poor people and helping. That's an ideal in the Torah. In a book written thousands of years ago, it talks about that. It's unimaginable to think about this today. These are all new ideas society's coming around to now, and thousands of years ago we have these instructions in the Torah. And lastly, I think is also something which is really important, but thankfully not so pertinent. That's the idea of respect for human life. And I think this is more impactful when you think about it from the historical perspective. How many societies, conducted a wholesale slaughter from the Greeks to the Far East. Obviously, the Romans perfected this, but these, Aristotle talks about sex selection and child and overpopulation. These things which the people of tremendous intellect, but the little respect that they had for human life. It's startling, and that's from more of a historical. But historically, our religion has always given tremendous value to even a single. You save a life, right? So as if you uphold the whole world, right? That's the Mishnah. Mishnah says you save one life, save even one life. As if you save the entire world. So I think that our Judaism should be important because if we want to help the world, like the idea of Tikkun Olam, what is the idea of Tikkun Olam? To perfect the world. If we want to perfect the world, a good place to look for is the Torah. That's why I think the Torah is important. Lastly, I think the reason why the Torah should be important is because the Torah is true. And we talk about the idea of God. We talk about the idea of the Torah. We really believe it. We really believe that there was this tremendous experience at Sinai 3,300 years ago. And the existence of God and the existence and the reality of the Torah, these two facts are the most important fact. If they're true, they're the most important facts, most important pieces of information in the entire world. Because the ramifications of this idea, the second you take the Torah and you turn it from a book into a book given by God Himself, what you're doing is you're making it so much more valuable, so much more important. If it's just a very nice book with nice ideals and laws and and just a nice way of living, well, then you could take it or leave it. But if it's true, right, and if God does exist, and if the Torah is true, think about those ramifications. That's why I say even in Judaism we don't believe in blind faith. So even to believe in God, to say you believe in God, it's not good enough. You have to really delve into the subject. And the Torah. How do we know the Torah is true? And how can we prove it? What kind of evidence do we have? But these two pieces of information are the most important pieces of information that you could possibly in the entire world. Number one, the existence of God, and number two, the fact that the Torah is God-given. Because why is it so important? Because once you have those two things in place, the ramifications are enormous for us as individuals and as members of the community. Because the second you turn that switch on and you say, "Okay, God does exist for sure," and the Torah is His, book of instructions, to us, to the Jewish people, and our destiny to share with the world. What you did is you turned the Torah and you made it from a very nice book of instructions of history, of narrative, and you made it binding, you made it real, and you made it pertinent for us today. And that's why, and think about it, if it's true, how important is it? If it's true, it means it's of tremendous importance to us as individuals and as members of the community. So that's what I have. This is my list. I think everyone come up with their own list, but I think it's something that's worth thinking about, talking about, discussing. It's a little weighty, I know, but why is our Judaism important? Number one, we could help us maximize our life and have more pleasure in life, more meaning in life, to really live life to its fullest, which is something we all want, we need, and we're programmed to desire. It does contain the keys to make the society at large just a better place. If we want to perfect society, and overwhelmingly Jews are driven to do that. Elon Musk, right? He's Jewish, yeah, baby, one of us. Make the world a better place. But also, lastly, it's because it's true. And if it's true, how important is it? It's very, very important. And that's it. If anyone has any questions, any further comments, I welcome and crave them. What does everyone say about this table? I think it's a little too wide, no?
It's perfect.
It's perfect, but I feel like it stunts interaction amongst. It's like no.
Apparently, we're just not talking enough. That's my saying.
Okay, so is anyone interested in looking at one of these? Should I pass this around? This is the last time I'm trying to upsell you guys in this. I don't get paid any money for it.